Hi guys, Squirrel here, back with some Kerbal Space Program. This is episode 2. If you remember, in episode 1, we built our first kind of rocket, which was just a very simple, solid rocket fuel, rockety thing, and we flew it out, headed towards the sea, ended up landing over here somewhere on the beach. But we got quite a bit of science for it, and we've still got 25 left. Now, if we have a look at the tech tree, pretty much everything that we have now is going to cost 15, 18 and 20 to unlock. So at the moment we can only unlock one thing. If we come out and go into this thing, the mission control, and we have a look at what contracts we currently have available, we have two contracts: escape the atmosphere and orbit Kerbin. Now, escaping the atmosphere is really only going to happen if we unlock the next stage in rocketry, which will give us fuel. And orbit Kerbin is a much more difficult proposition because it requires us to have enough fuel to get up there and perform an orbit maneuver. But the most important thing about these is we have to ensure that the pilot, in this case Jeb or whoever else we take, can actually get back safely, because we don't want to kill that person. We can't really go and rescue them right now, and we need them to come back for all the science. So in order to do that, if you go back to the tech tree, you'll see this one, survivability, and the all-important heat shield. No matter what happens, if we're going to go out towards the atmosphere, if we're going to come back in and survive that, we're going to need a heat shield. Which pretty much means until we get this, we can forget any idea of leaving the atmosphere. Okay, and if we get this, we can't unlock this, which has the fuel. So what I propose we do is we take the rocketry, which is this one, and that will unlock the ability to have the fuel tank and the swivel liquid fuel engine. Now, why is it called a swivel liquid fuel engine? Forget all the numbers, look on the right hand side, it says alternator, engine, gimbal, electric charge. Now, the alternator means that the engine has an alternator. It has something that generates electricity. That's very, very important in a spacecraft, because if you don't have an alternator on your engine, if you run out of electricity, you're done. Unless you have solar panels or another way of getting charge, you're done. Without electricity, you cannot operate the craft. But down towards the right, it says gimbal, vectoring range 3. Now, gimbaling, vectoring means that the engine can point its thrust in different directions, which gives you maneuverability, and that is supremely useful. More powerful engines don't have gimbaling. Yeah, they just point in a straight line. They do it very, very well, but you need another way of controlling the craft. This engine can gimbal. That's useful. So we're going to use that with some fuel, and we're going to do some more experiments. Now, we've just bought that. Let's just double check. Right, so no more contracts have come out yet, but look, we've still got these. The game's given us these. Altitude of 7,500, distance of 5,000, speed of 450. If we can break some of these, we're going to get some money. And money is what we need right now. So let's jump inside the vehicle assembly building and see if we can make another craft. We're going to go for a sub-orbital or an atmospheric launch. Effectively, we're going to stay within the atmosphere, which means we're going to stay below 70k. Let's get rid of that completely. So what we've got left is the pod. And tell you what, let's not take Jeb. Jeb's just got some XP. Let's take Jeb out. Let's give Valentina a go. Yeah, let's get Valentina some XP on this launch. So we're going to keep with that pod, which has one parachute, which, as you saw, doesn't really protect the engine. Yeah. What that means is we're going to try and land in the sea, because the sea's a bit more forgiving. Now, fuel tanks, because we're not on normal, because we're on moderate difficulty career, although we've unlocked these things, we now have to buy them. So it's 1,200 cost and 2,500 cost. Now, the difference is the amount of fuel. That has 90 liquid fuel, that one has 45, so this is half the size of that one. No surprise. Basically, it doesn't really matter, we can always just put two of these down anyway, so since this is cheaper, I think we're going to get that one. So let's purchase that. So you can see that will fit nicely under there. And if you want to clone something, you hold down the Alt key and then click it, and that'll give you another one. And so on, just keep doing that as long as you want. Now, more fuel means more weight. Okay, so you can't just think to yourself, oh, we'll just add loads and loads of fuel, we can go as high as we want. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, fuel's pretty heavy, and the more fuel you add, the more the engine's going to struggle to take off. So it's all a balancing act when it comes to rocketry. But as I say, we can look at the numbers later with the engineer module, but we don't want to focus on that just yet because I don't want to confuse the matter. Engines, right, now what have we got under engines? We've got the swivel and the Reliance. The Reliance has an alternator but no gimbal. The swivel, on the other hand, has a gimbal. So we have to make a decision about which one we want. Forget the power for a minute. This one has better thrust. This one has less thrust, but can vector. And I'm going to go with a vector. So I'm going to take that for 3,500. Put a vectoring engine on the bottom. How are we doing? Not sure how long the thrust is going to burn for. Ignore the numbers, but can you see my engineer here? This is telling me that we can burn for 31 seconds. There's enough fuel here to burn for 31 seconds. That's what we're saying. So I think we can probably afford a few more fuel tanks on there. 54-second burn is what we can do with this. That's quite a long burn, 54 seconds. We'll be able to get pretty high with this. What I want to do is try and take off, and if I can get high enough and fast enough, I can actually travel to a different part of Kerbin, a different biome. And if we can do that, then we can land in a different biome and get different science data, yeah? Which is good, because it's going to let us unlock more stuff in the tech tree, particularly the survivability aspect. We need to get that unlocked now. We did unlock this. This is crucial. This is the Science Junior. We're going to unlock that, and we're going to purchase one. Now what we don't want to do is stick the Science Junior on the bottom. Why do we not want to do that? Well, because fuel is heavy, and heavy things should always be down the bottom here, preferably speaking. So what we're going to do is put that there. And now we've got our science pod, and a lot of fuel, and an engine. The downside of this is that that parachute is not going to be able to hold this thing up. Yeah? We can get up, but when we come back down again, there's no way that parachute's going to stop all of this. I mean, even when the fuel's gone, it'll still weigh quite a bit. And unfortunately, I don't think we have any more parachutes. We've only got that. What we need is a lateral parachute, which was again part of the, I think, survivability. Before we go any further, let's call this the SSI-2. Hit save. There we go. Now we need some mystery goo. We're not going to go anywhere without mystery goo, because it's good for science. Mystery goo, where are you? Let's zoom in. Now, how many do I need of these things? I'd like to take at least 2. So if I remember the symmetry thing, if we press the X key, X, we can go for 3. Let's put 1 on the opposite side here like that. Now these doors will open, as you'll see. If we deploy that, that's what it looks like. So, but it doesn't matter, it's a visual thing. It doesn't matter that the goo's actually stuck to the side. It won't make any difference whatsoever. Final thing we're going to need are some winglet things down here. So we'll put 4 on there. Let's press X, and that's going to give us a bit more stability as we're taking off. Save that. Now, structural. What have we got structural? We've got the stack decoupler. What's a stack decoupler? Well, remember I was saying to you about there's no way all of this is going to land. This parachute can't hold all of this weight up. Well, we don't actually need all of that, although it's going to cost us money when this thing explodes. What's actually important is getting this back. If we get this back, we get all the data back. That's the important thing. So, if we click on the stack decoupler and purchase that, so we unlock it, take the stack decoupler and click it there. Now, I don't know if you was paying attention or not, but see the staging down here? Currently, you've got a parachute in stage 0, so that's the last stage, that's the final bit. A stack decoupler is effectively a separator. What it will do is it will separate everything above it from everything below it. So if we put that in there like that, we now get a separate stage, this. So when we press the spacebar to activate the coupler, it will separate that piece from this piece, like so. Which basically means this will fall away, and hit the ground and explode. We don't know anything about that yet because we don't have any parachutes that we can put on the side of this thing to stop it from exploding. But we can save this, and that parachute should hold this thing up, depending on how things land. Now we don't have any legs either, so we can't put legs down to try and help with the impact. We don't have very much at the moment. We could put girder segments down to try and protect it when it hits the ground. But I think this thing should survive. Let's hit the save. Just check that your staging's correct. Engine, then decoupler, and then parachute. It's all good. So last thing we can do is just, whoops, click on that, lower it down a bit. Mouse wheel down just to bring it down to the ground, like so. Hopefully that'll stand upright on the launch pad. We don't have anything to keep it upright at the moment. There are things you can unlock later which keep it upright, but we don't have any of those. So, save and let's go for a launch. Okay, that's balancing precariously. Hello, Valentina. Right, now let's clear out some of these contracts that we had from earlier. That was these things. If we click on these, you'll see we gathered all this stuff from Kerbin. We just go through them one at a time, delete them out. That's it. So they appear here when they're complete. Current contracts that we have are altitude contracts, distance contracts, and speed contracts. If we can get them, we'll get a bit of stuff. But the real objective of this mission is to get more science. That's what we need to unlock some more tech tree stuff. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to basically fly as far as we can now. If I press the M key, okay, that gives us a map view. Holding the right mouse button, I can look around. Mouse wheel, I can zoom in. This gives you an idea of where we are. Now, the launch pad just happens to be lovely on the equator. Yeah, doesn't matter yet, but it does matter later. What we can try and do is effectively launch, and we're going to get up in the atmosphere but not out of the atmosphere, so below 70. And if we can sort of be flying over in this general direction, we could head north. We can try and go for another biome. These are different biomes, you see. They're kind of like deserty or hill or Greenland or sea. I think there's even like a marsh or something like this. There's different biomes and we get different signs from it. But what we're going to do in this mission is take off and head out to sea. But get nice and high, yeah, nice and high up over the water, because then the science data will be different. And then we're going to land. We're going to parachute back. The separate part, the bottom stage of our rocket will fall into the sea and explode. But we shall land safely over here somewhere. That's the plan. So press the M key to get out of this. So just remember, press T to get the SAS, the stability enabled. Now, the difference being with this one is this is a fuel engine. Yeah, it's a liquid fuel engine, which means we get to control the throttle. Now, the throttle is the thing down the side of this nav ball. And if you press the shift key, it goes up. If you press the control key, it comes down. So you can control the throttle with shift and control with your left hand, little finger usually. There are two hotkeys. One is Z, or Z, depending on where you're from, and X. So right next to the shift and control is Z and X, like that. They're hotkeys for maximum and zero throttle. So what I'm going to do off the launch is go for a maximum throttle launch. Okay, so when I press the space bar, according to our staging, the rocket's going to fire, it'll start burning fuel, and we shall take off. I'm going to head vertically for a little while, and then I'm going to throttle back. Now the thing is about Kerbin in the atmosphere is you don't want to get over about 200 meters per second until you've gone past about 10,000 meters of altitude. Basically, the reason for that is the air is so thick that it provides so much resistance that if you go faster than 200 meters per second, it's not very fuel efficient. It's more fuel efficient to stay at about 200. When you break 10,000, that's when the atmosphere is getting thinner. At that point, you want to accelerate, throttle up, and that's when you'll start heading east, which is what we're going to do. That's the plan. But with Kerbal Space Program, things often don't go to plan, and you'll often get explosions, and that's the fun of the game. So we'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen either, so we'll find out. Okay, it's going to launch in 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. As I say, we're going to head in a vertical direction. Watch the speed here. 100 meters per second already. I'm going to throttle down to like 2/3. I'm going to throttle down to a half. There we go. That's just holding it at about 200. That's nice. Okay, altitude of 3,000 already. Look at our fuel down here. It's not even on half yet. We've got lots and lots of fuel. Throttle down a bit more. So you can see we've got a pretty good altitude here. We should ding that 7,500 meter contract very, very shortly. We're going too fast. Slow it down. There we go. Altitude achieved. When we hit 10k, I'm going to head east. Like so. It's 10k. I'm going to start heading east now. And now I'm going to throttle up. There we go. Not too much east. Throttle up to maximum now. Now if I press the map key, I want to keep my eye on this number here. I don't want this going too high. I'm going to throttle down a little bit. I don't want to leave the atmosphere, remember. I want to go high, but not above 70. I don't want to leave the atmosphere, so I'm going to go to about 40 or so. So I'm press X now and kill that throttle. And what I'm going to do now is start to head directly east. Just to burn off the remaining fuel. See, the fuel's nearly gone. There we go. So the fuel's all gone now. Now we are pretty high up. We are going to reach a peak of 45. Now, scientific term which you need to learn at this point. This is called the Apoapsis. Or the apogee. It's basically the peak of your orbit. It's the highest point in the orbit. 45,000 meters in this case. Now there's no way Jeb can go outside at this point and he'll just fly off. So we're not even going to bother doing that. The atmosphere will just take us away. But what we can do is we can do some mystery goo. Which should nick us some science. There we go. 8.1 science. The goo seems to be getting very cold because we're quite high up. Makes sense. Let's keep that data. We'll also observe the materials bay at this point. So we're very high up over the sea. 20 signs. The rarefied air has caused interesting changes to the gel samples. It seems like something is happening with the interior structure. Tons of signs. 20 signs. Keep that wonderful data. And you know what? Let's go for a crew report up here as well. Let's get a crew report and see what Valentina thinks. You record the crew's assessment of the situation for science. Not a massive amount, but, you know, it's free. It's worth having. And that's that. If we actually look where we are, press the M key, you can see we are now descending. We're coming back down. Alright, so now is the time to press the space bar. You see the detachment? Now that is going to basically fall away separately to us. The stack decoupler separated us two. We don't have a heat shield, but that's okay. We don't need a heat shield because we didn't leave the atmosphere. We're not going quickly enough for it to matter. But normally what you would get is a situation where the heat shield would protect you now during re-entry. As you fall back to Earth, the atmosphere, your speed, your velocity would cause so much friction against the air that you start to heat up massively. And without the heat shield, all of this would just tear apart. And Valentina would probably die in a massive fireball. And nobody wants that, particularly not Valentina. So if I press the M key, you can see where we are now. We flew pretty far. Look at that. Pretty far. If we look at the contract list, you can see we achieved the 7,500 meters. We got the distance record. We flew way more than 5 kilometers. And we achieved our speed record of more than 450 meters per second, which is fantastic. So we've got a bit of money there and should get a bit of science. But we're not done yet. We're going to fall back towards the sea. You can see we're 20,000 meters. We're starting to tumble a bit now. We've got a bit of re-entry problems going. Oh dear. We're going quite quick. Did you see the heat start there? If we'd have gone much higher, the velocity would have started to create heat problems. But as it stands, we should be okay. You see we're slowing down. The atmosphere is arresting our speed. 300 meters per second. That's absolutely fine. There's that component falling away. You see it? Because it doesn't have... It's going to hit the ground at some point. Hit the water. It'll just explode. It's on a completely different trajectory to us. But yeah, if we'd have gone higher, we would have needed a heat shield. Otherwise, we would have started... You could actually see when we came back then, we started to get a bit of a heat signature around us. We started to warm up much higher and we'd have had real problems. But the idea now is we can get that data and do some more experiments on the surface of the water. I'm going to deploy parachute now. So that should orient us back up. So we turn SAS off at this point. Flip ourselves round. And there's the wonderful sunshine. Lovely. So once the parachute fully opens, it should right ourselves the correct way. I think that's that piece is gone. I think I heard the explosion. It's definitely toast. So 500 meters this thing deploys. You can actually control the altitude that it deploys at if you want to. You can even cut the parachute if you need to. But there it goes. And like I say, the water's a little bit more forgiving, so there should be no problem. 6 meters per second into water should be absolutely fine. And then what we're going to do, we're going to do some more experimentation. We're going to get outside, see if we can nab some more data out of this thing, and get some more experiments on the water before we recover the vehicle. But otherwise, it's been a very successful mission. There you go. Kaplop. And it orients itself around. And if we can just turn it around a little bit like that, there we go. Okay, right, what can we do here? Well, we can do a goo experiment. See what the goo looks like on the water. The goo escapes into the water. Recovery 3.6 science. It's still science. It's still worth taking. It's interesting how it escapes into the water. I would have thought that one would have done that, but not this one. So what can we do with this? Well, all we can do is review the data. In order to get the data, we need to get Valentina out of here. We could do a crew report, but if we did, it will overwrite the crew report that we did. So the way the crew report works is it kind of stored it in this vehicle, and you know, when we was flying around, we already stored it. It can only take one crew report if you like. But what you can do is you can EVA Valentina like that, right click, and then you can take that data. You see? So we take it, and then if we right click on this, if we can get it to move down a little bit, we can collect the data out of that. Removing the experiment will render the module inoperable. Restoring functionality requires scientists. So only the scientist can reset the goo thing. Only he can reset it to work again. Anybody can collect this data, yeah, but it would take a scientist to reset it. But that's absolutely, we don't care about that. We could try deploying the goo here, or observing the goo here. Can only be externally controlled by a scientist. Deploy. No, underwater, can't do much with it. That's fine. We can collect the data from the Science Junior. Render it inoperable. Would require a scientist to reset it. That's fine. Why would you do this? Why would you collect the data? Well, one reason you would collect the data from these things is if you're not going to be able to get these things back to base. I don't need to do this. I'm just showing you how to do this. Because what you can do is collect the data and then right click on this vehicle and store. You see how we've got 4 experiments? We've got the 2 goos, the central, and the report that we took out of here. So we store that. That is now stored in there. If she basically does an EVA report here, she says it's a most precarious situation. Now the reason she's saying that is because she's technically she's kind of flying, but it's 5 data, so we'll keep it. Can we store that back in there? Let's try. Store experiment. Yep. So that stored it in there. The last thing we can try is getting her into the water and trying to do another crew report. The danger is that we can't get her back in here because, well, she'll be swimming and stuff. But we can try it. Let's toggle the EVA suit. That puts her head back on. I don't want her drowning. So we press spacebar to let go. Now she's swimming. She doesn't look very happy at all. But can she do an EVA report? I don't think spacesuit was entirely necessary to get here, was it? 2.9. But it's still 2.9. It's still free science. It's worth having. And this is the bit. I just had the board key then. Did you see that? There you go. Brilliant. So we got her back inside. We are ready to recover the vessel. One last crew report. 1.8. We'll take it. It's a diminishing return situation. The more that you do it in the same place, the more it diminishes rapidly. But 1.8 at this stage of the game, we'll take it. We're now ready to recover this thing intact. We've collected all of the data out of these components. So everything's actually in here. So if you wanted to, and you know, if you're up in space, you could separate that away now and just bring this back. This would have all the data. Equally, if you had an antenna, you could just transmit it all, but then you don't get as much. So it's better to recover if you can. So if we click recover, there we go. 46 signs earned, which is absolutely fantastic news. 46 signs. Not only that, look at the money. 302,000. We can actually upgrade some units around here now, which is absolutely vital for what we're about to do next. But let's just have a quick look through. Crew report from Kerbin's water, 1.8. Kerbin's upper atmosphere, 4.1. That's the upper atmosphere, remember. We didn't leave the atmosphere. Once we do leave the atmosphere, we can get even better signs. Observation from Kerbin's water, that's when we were actually in it. Mystery goo from Kerbin's upper atmosphere. Material study. That unit that I told you about, that's, I mean, look at that. 20 signs from that material science bay. Fantastic. And don't forget, if you can somehow get a scientist on board, yeah, you can reset that thing, go somewhere else and do it again. But you have to have the scientist to do it. Flying over Kerbin's water, well, that was when he was holding onto the craft on the ocean. Remember I said to you, technically he's flying, that's what that is. Report from the water itself, and then we recovered the vessel that survived the flight, so we get a little bit of science. In terms of parts, we got the command pod back, the goo, the parachute, propellant, the engine, and all of the fuel. That was trashed. There's nothing we could do about that at this stage. So we only recovered 4,000 in parts. In terms of crew, Valentina gained 1 XP, so our total rep now is 90, so we're pushing nicely up that green bar there. If we look at our contract reports, which is here, set a distance record of 100 kilometers. That gave us 66,000. 100 kilometers, that's how far we flew. Although we went up into the atmosphere, what, 40 kilometers? Because we were heading eastward, by the time we came back down again, we'd done well over 100 kilometers. So we set the distance underneath it of 39, of 28, and each of these has given us money, 17. We just picked up a whole bunch of achievements in one go. 26, 11, then we got the speed record of 750, altitude record of 19 kilometers. More distance, more speed, altitude, just, you know, in one mission, we just rolled in a whole ton of achievements, and that's given us a lot of money. And that's actually really good, because now when we look at this tech tree, 51 signs, one of the first things I'm going to do is unlock this survivability, because we need this heat shield. So I'm going to unlock that, okay? Do we unlock that one yet? Well, the aerodynamic nose cone becomes more useful because when you take off, you've got resistance, you've got friction against the air, and particularly if you've not kept yourself aerodynamic, you need parts like this on top of the fuel tank. These winglets have actually control surfaces, so they can help you to fly. This is a radial decoupler, don't worry about that, and that's a small nose cone. So I'm not going to take this just yet. We can afford it. We can't afford anything in this line yet. These are all 45s. Everything in this column is a 45 signs. So I'm not going to waste my signs on that unless I have to. We can afford it, but I'm not going to take it just yet. Instead, what I'm going to do is look at the contracts and decide what to do next. However, if we're going up into space, then I want to make sure that we maximize our trip up into space. But we've reached the end of this episode, so you'll have to wait till episode 3 for that little adventure. Hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up and leave some comments if you did. Take care, guys, and happy flying.